Hi guys, I'm Nat, and I did a presentation on the Library of Congress children's subject headings. So, the Library of Congress has developed a program specifically for children and young adults called the Children's and Young Adults Cataloging Program, or KYAC for short. This program details the cataloging procedures for materials published in the United States. It's administered by the Literature section of the United States Program's Law and Literature Division. KYAC develops new, adapts old, and monitors the current children and young adult subject headings. It's also important to note that KYAC is completely separate from the Library of Congress's subject headings. KYAC does have limits in what types of materials have to have their subject headings. Most obviously, English language material published anywhere in the world must have children's and young adult subject headings. Foreign language materials can get kind of tricky. Only foreign language materials published in the United States are required. However, any library is free to add subject headings to foreign language materials published outside of the United States. It's just not required. There are also limits on what materials and genres need KYAC subject headings. The following fall under the KYAC program: collections and single works of fiction for children and young adults, juvenile graphic novels, juvenile novels in verse, juvenile poetry, original or traditional fairy tales, folklore, fables, classical nursery rhymes like Mother Goose, stories in rhyme, song lyrics via picture books, fiction about realistic animals, bilingual or polyglot fiction for children and young adults, and juvenile fiction in Braille or sign language. The Library of Congress specifically outlines that topical material for children and young adults is not included, such as nonfiction or factual material. Materials on the folklore of indigenous peoples in the United States and plays for children and young adults are also not covered. Next, we'll cover some distinguishing features and applications of KYAC during cataloging. You can tell when a material uses KYAC subject headings in Mark 21. The second indicator of 1 in the 600 field tells us that these are juvenile headings. There are also a few different formats of notation depending on the date of the record. Prior to January 1st, 1999, you'll find AC and subfield B in the 001 field. If it was created or updated after January 1st, 1999, then you'll find LCAC in subfield A of the 042 field. If it was created or updated after March 1st, 2022, then you'll find CYAC in subfield A of the 042 field. There are quite a few distinguishing features of KYAC. First is the removal of unnecessary wording. We already know that these subject headings are for children, so it's redundant to say children again. Separation anxiety in children would become simply separation anxiety. Similarly, children's parties would just become parties. Secondly, KYAC modifies and creates new headings in direct form using natural language. Animals mythical becomes mythical animals. This flows better for children and is straight to the point. Thirdly, we remove hyphens from headings, and this usually follows Chicago Manual of Style. Water-supply becomes water supply, 2 words. Also, metal-work becomes 1 word, metalwork. Next, we remove glosses from headings, denoting whether separation is philosophical or psychological is unnecessary for children. Having these glosses could create more confusion than necessary, so it's best just to combine topics. So separation philosophy and separation psychology would just fall under one heading, separation. We also note that most animal and plant species are plural, so this means you would list your subjects like tigers or roses. Similarly to the previous, it's better to use common names over scientific names. The scientific names are too complex for children, which would make the catalog inaccessible for them. They might not click on a resource that shows Anora fistulata, even though they are looking for tube-lipped nectar bats. We also use forms that are more commonly known than the original non-English language name. This goes back to using simple and common language for children. So the International Children's Rainforest is preferred over Bosque Eterno de los Niños. Lastly, kayak uses some special headings and subdivisions over the Library of Congress subject headings equivalent. So for example, we would use sports -- fiction over sports stories, or trees -- planting over tree planting. So next, kayak highlights a few applications of the subject headings that differ from the Library of Congress subject headings. First is the omission of juvenile from subject headings. Again, including juvenile is redundant because we already know this record is for children by the Mark 21 notation. So juvenile fiction just becomes fiction. Juvenile literature is simply literature. Kayak also does not require geographic subdivisions for subject headings. This means that we don't have to put athletes, United States, or composers, Costa Rica, and the like. Next, we can add -- fiction to subject headings if the topic adds to the reader's information on the subject. If a book about AIDS adds to the reader's knowledge about AIDS, then we can add it. And this also goes for abstract topics like friendship. Fourthly, kayak uses both general and specific subject headings. For young children, it's more likely to only use the more common heading, like birds. Adolescents or older children may include both the specific and general, and young adults may only include the specific heading, like dodos. When regarding nonfiction, you should use both popular and scientific terms. For example, you can include both weather and meteorology, or both fossils and paleontology. You can also add headings denoting form, genre, or format. This gives children more information about the resource that may not be obvious to them. So if it's a joke book, you could write jokes. If it's in Spanish, then it's a Spanish language material, and so forth. These are 2 PDF resources from Kayak's page that outlines all of the information I've talked about. The first is an introduction to Kayak, which is where most of this information is from. And the second is a list of kayak subject headings. You can find these by clicking on the words underneath the photos. And this is my works cited. The first 2 are the kayak homepage, stuff from there, stuff about their about. And the last one is the catalog record from the mark example in the beginning. Thanks.